what if basically everything you've been taught about how to succeed in your career is just, well, what if it's a guaranteed recipe for getting left completely behind?
Yeah, that is a terrifying thought.
Right. I mean, think about the advice you get from mentors or, those orientation videos. Keep your head down. Be modest.
Be authentic.
Exactly. Bring your authentic self to work. Trust your leaders. Be a
Mhm.
team player.
Mm.
And what if I told you that following that exact advice is actually the primary reason you aren't getting promoted?
It's a genuinely jarring reality check.
It totally is.
Because from the moment we, enter the workforce, we're conditioned to believe the workplace is this rational meritocracy. We want to believe it rewards virtue.
Yeah, we want the good guys to win.
Right. But when you strip away the inspirational quotes and actually look at the raw data, it paints a completely different and much darker picture of how human beings actually operate inside corporate structures.
Yeah. So today's deep dive is exactly that. It's a brutal kind of slap in the face reality check for everyone listening. We are essentially tearing down the multi-billion-dollar fairy tale of the modern leadership industry.
We really are.
And our sources today, they're centered around extracts from this book called Leadership BS. It's by Jeffrey Pfeffer.
Yeah, he's a legendary tenured organizational behavior professor at the Stanford Graduate School of Business.
Right. And reading this material, I mean, it feels like he's acting as a whistleblower for the entire corporate world.
That's actually a highly accurate way to look at his work. I mean, Pfeffer has spent decades inside the academic ivory tower, right? Studying power dynamics, organizational behavior.
Uh-huh.
But with this work, he's stepping out of that tower to basically point out that the emperor is completely naked.
Yeah, totally naked.
He's decided to finally strip away the emotion, the feel-good fables, and show us the actual ruthless laws of gravity that govern the modern workplace.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Because if the data in these sources is right, everything you and I and you listening, everything we assume about professional success is just upside down.
Completely inverted.
So our mission today is to separate the comfortable illusions from the hard evidence. And I have to admit, as someone who has, read my fair share of leadership books, I was stunned.
It is deeply counterintuitive, and that's precisely why it's so critical to understand. If you don't grasp the descriptive reality of the workplace, meaning how things actually function.
Rather than how we want them to function.
Exactly. The normative ideal versus the descriptive reality. If you don't know the descriptive reality, you are essentially navigating a minefield while blindfolded.
You're playing a game without knowing the real rules. So let's start with the sheer scale of the illusion. Because to understand why the advice we get is so detached from reality, we have to look at the industry selling it to us.
The industrial complex of leadership training.
Yeah, the training industry itself.
Oh, wow.
Globally, corporate training is a $50 billion behemoth.
It's massive.
And out of that, roughly $14 to $20 billion are spent every single year specifically on leadership development.
$20 billion annually. Just think about the magnitude of that capital allocation.
It's insane.
You would naturally assume, with that staggering level of investment, that our modern workplaces are just thriving ecosystems.
Right. You'd think we'd be in a corporate utopia by now.
You would assume leaders are deeply empathetic and employees are, genuinely happy to log on every morning.
But they aren't. The data on workplace health is utterly disastrous. The disconnect is just staggering. I mean, take a look at the Gallup data from the sources. Globally, only 13% of employees are actually engaged at work.
13%.
That's nothing.
Which logically means the other 87% are either just going through the motions, checking out mentally, or actively working against the company.
Actively working against it. Wow.
Yeah, the breakdown is even more concerning. It shows that 24% of employees aren't just bored, they are actively disengaged.
So they're the ones roaming the virtual Slack channels, spreading discontent.
Exactly. They're alienating customers and effectively sabotaging the organization on a daily basis.
It's basically a silent strike happening in shiny office buildings all over the world. But there's this one specific anti-common sense statistic in the research that absolutely floored me.
The Parade magazine poll?
Yes. 35% of U.S. employees, that's more than a third of the workforce, said they would willingly forego a substantial pay raise if it meant their direct supervisor would be fired.
I mean, think about the underlying psychology of that decision.
Right, in this economy.
Exactly. Inflation is real. Cost of living is a constant pressure. Yet people are so desperate, so thoroughly miserable under their current management, that they are willing to act against their own direct economic self-interest just to escape their boss.
That metric alone tells you how profoundly toxic the standard management environment is. So here is the multi-billion-dollar question. How can an industry that spends up to $20 billion a year yield these kinds of catastrophic results?
It's a great question.
We have data from McKinsey showing that this massive financial investment yields a pathetic 2% improvement in actual workplace productivity.
Just 2%.
2%.
Yeah.
I mean, if this were the aviation industry and we spent $20 billion on safety training, but planes were still falling out of the sky, they'd ground every flight.
Absolutely.
If you spent that kind of money on a medical treatment and it only worked 2% of the time, the FDA would shut it down overnight. How does this industry survive?
Well, the medical analogy you just brought up is actually perfect. Pfeffer uses it extensively in the source material.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he compares the current state of a leadership industry to the medical profession prior to a landmark document called the Flexner Report in 1910.
I'm not familiar with the Flexner Report. What was medicine like back then?
Before 1910, American medicine was essentially the Wild West. There were virtually no scientific standards.
So anyone could just be a doctor.
Basically, yes. No rigorous curriculum, zero barriers to entry. You had snake oil salesmen peddling literal toxic potions as cures. You could put up a shingle outside your house and start prescribing mercury for a headache.
Yikes.
Right. The Flexner Report changed all that by forcing medical schools to adhere to strict scientific protocols and objective, measurable data.
And Pfeffer is arguing that the leadership industry today is operating in that exact same pre-scientific state.
Precisely. Think about it. There are absolutely zero barriers to entry to become a leadership expert.
Anyone with an internet connection can call themselves an executive coach.
Anyone. You can start a blog, self-publish a motivational book, give a keynote speech. There is no requirement whatsoever to understand peer-reviewed social science or behavioral data.
It's an industry built entirely on charisma.
Charisma and storytelling, yes, not scientific rigor.
But wait, these companies aren't stupid. They have massive HR departments. If they were spending millions bringing in these gurus and productivity only goes up 2%, how are they justifying the expense? Like, what is all this money actually buying?
It's buying entertainment. It's buying psychological relief. In the industry, they call the primary measurement tool happy sheets.
Happy sheets.
Yeah. When a corporation brings in a high-priced speaker for a 2-day retreat, they don't track hard metrics like turnover rates or error reduction over the next 6 months.
Let me guess. They hand out a survey at the end of the seminar while everyone is still energized.
Exactly. They hand out a questionnaire asking, did you enjoy the speaker? Did the seminar make you feel inspired?
So they're optimizing for the feeling of inspiration, not actual execution.
Yes. Contrast that with how we measure a real metric. If a hospital wants to reduce infection rates, they don't ask surgeons if a seminar made them feel inspired about hygiene.
They track actual patient infection rates.
Exactly. The leadership industry systematically ignores hard data because the hard data definitively proves their product does not work.
This makes so much sense. Think about your own career for a second if you're listening to this. Think about the last time you were forced to sit through an all-day corporate leadership seminar.
Oh, we've all been there.
Right. If you felt like it was just empty jargon buzzwords like synergy and empowerment, you aren't crazy. The data proves it's mostly theater.
It's an illusion designed to make everyone feel productive without changing the difficult structural realities.
And because it is such a comforting illusion, it distracts us from understanding how power is actually accumulated in a real organization. Which leads us to the specific myths this industry sells us.
The fairy tales.
Yes, let's dive right into those because this is where the data gets incredibly disruptive. Myth number 1. The modesty trap.
This is a big one.
We are constantly told that great leaders are humble, they share the credit, they never seek the spotlight. It's on every LinkedIn post.
It is the cornerstone of modern leadership literature. And the most heavily cited example of this is Jim Collins' wildly popular book, Good to Great.
Right, where he talks about level 5 leaders.
Yes. Collins studied companies that made a massive leap in financial performance. He claimed the secret sauce was these level 5 leaders who combine fierce resolve with extreme personal humility.
They look out the window to give credit and look in the mirror to assign blame. It sounds beautiful.
It does sound beautiful. The problem is the underlying math.
The actual statistics.
Exactly. Pfeffer completely dismantles this. Collins started with a massive pool of 1,435 companies. He was searching for organizations that made the leap under these modest leaders.
Out of 1,435 companies, do you know how many actually fit his criteria?
Go ahead and tell them.
11.
11. Out of 1,435.
That is a survival rate of less than 1%. It's like 0.7%. That is the definition of extreme survivor bias.
It is a textbook statistical error. Just because those 11 successful leaders happen to exhibit modesty does not mathematically mean modesty caused the success.
It's like looking at a lottery winner and saying the secret to wealth is buying a ticket on a Tuesday wearing a blue hat.
Exactly. And more importantly, if you zoom out and look at objective sociological data regarding who actually acquires power, the hard truth is the exact opposite.
Narcissism.
Narcissism, not modesty, is systematically rewarded.
And just to be clear, we aren't using narcissism as a casual insult here. We are talking about the clinical definition. Grandiose self-importance, lack of empathy, profound entitlement.
Yes.
And when you look at famous leaders, Steve Jobs, Bill Gates in the early days, Jack Welch, they exhibited highly narcissistic traits.
And there's rigorous academic data to back this up. Researchers did a study looking at 32 highly successful tech CEOs in Silicon Valley. They wanted to measure their narcissism and correlate it to success.
Wait, how do you measure that? You can't just send a survey to a CEO asking, hey, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much of a megalomaniac are you?
They would either lie or throw it in the trash. So the analysts tracked it unobtrusively. They treated the company's public footprint like a psychological crime scene.
Oh, I love that. How?
They counted how many times a CEO used the pronoun I versus the collective we in press releases. They measured the physical size of the CEO's photograph in the annual report compared to the rest of the team.
They literally measured the physical footprint of their ego.
They did. They even looked at the sheer disparity in compensation between the CEO and the second in command.
And what were the results?
Statistically significant. The higher the CEO scored on that unobtrusive index, the higher their overall financial compensation.
Wow.
The bigger the gap between their pay and the team's pay, and perhaps most surprisingly, the longer their tenure in the leadership position.
Narcissism didn't get them fired. It paid off in millions of dollars. But I have to push back here.
Go ahead.
Nobody likes an arrogant jerk. If you ask anyone, they will universally tell you they want a humble, collaborative boss. So why do rational boards of directors hire these people?
It comes down to two powerful cognitive forces: confirmation bias and the exposure effect.
Okay, break that down.
By definition, a narcissist projects extreme, unwavering self-confidence. They speak forcefully, they dominate conversations. When human beings are stressed or unsure, we systematically mistake aggressive arrogance for actual competence.
We confuse the volume of the pitch with the quality of the idea.
Exactly. It's an algorithm that optimizes for confidence over competence. Plus, narcissists engage in self-nomination.
What's that?
When a leadership vacuum opens up, say a crisis hits, the modest person sits back. They evaluate if they are truly ready. They hope their track record speaks for itself.
Because they believe the system is fair.
But the narcissist rushes right into the center of the vacuum. They raise their hand, project absolute certainty, and declare, I'm the only one who can fix this.
And the board just hands them the keys.
They seize the narrative before the modest person has even updated their resume.
That is chilling. The modest person is at their desk working until 8 p.m., thinking their boss will see their value. Meanwhile, the narcissist is in the boardroom claiming credit for the modest person's work.
And this specific dynamic raises an incredibly important question about diversity and inclusion in the workplace. This modesty trap is uniquely devastating for marginalized groups.
Yes, let's really delve into this. If you are a woman or an Asian American professional, societal norms heavily pressure you to be modest.
Absolutely.
You are actively penalized for being aggressive in a way a white male executive isn't. A behavior that gets a man labeled a go-getter gets a woman labeled as bossy.
It creates an impossible double bind. Let's look at the Asian American experience highlighted in the data. You have Confucian cultural values that prioritize humility, interpersonal harmony, and putting the group first.
Which are objectively wonderful traits.
But the American corporate structure operates like an algorithm that actively filters for loud, narcissistic self-promotion.
So the very traits that make someone a great team player are misread as a lack of leadership capability.
Precisely. This cultural modesty becomes an invisible career guillotine. The data shows Asian Americans routinely demonstrate incredibly high technical performance. Yet, In Fortune 500 executive suites, they make up only around 2% of those top-tier roles.
2%. They're doing the heavy lifting, but they're getting reverse eliminated from power because they refuse to play the narcissistic game.
Which perfectly transitions us to the next deeply ingrained concept Pfeffer dismantles. Myth number 2, the authenticity illusion.
Right, because if you hear all this and think, well, I refuse to be a fake narcissist, I'm just going to be my authentic self, the data says that is the second massive lie.
The leadership industry obsesses over authenticity. Bring your whole self to work.
Be vulnerable, cry in front of your team.
But Pfeffer argues, backed by sociological research, that effective leadership is fundamentally a theatrical art. It is a performance.
So we are all just required to wear masks. Doesn't that make everyone a sociopath?
It's not about sociopathy. It's grounded in role theory. This posits that when you step into a management role, your personal attitudes and private fears become essentially irrelevant to the organization.
What matters is fulfilling the structural requirement of the role.
Yes. There's a fascinating study in the source material about factory workers that proves how a role rewires a person's brain.
Oh, this study blew my mind. Walk us through it.
Researchers went into a manufacturing plant and interviewed frontline workers on the assembly line. They documented their authentic attitudes. They were pro-worker, skeptical of management, deeply concerned with wages.
Makes sense.
Then, the researchers observed what happened when some of those specific workers were promoted to become foremen.
Did they stay true to their pro-worker roots?
Not at all. Their attitudes fundamentally shifted almost immediately. They became fiercely pro-management. They suddenly cared about efficiency and enforcing discipline. The daily pressures of the new role completely overwrote their previous authentic selves.
But the study doesn't stop there.
No. Some of those exact same frontline workers were instead elected to be union stewards. What happened? Their attitudes flipped the exact opposite way. They became intensely pro-union, fought efficiency goals, filed grievances.
So guys who used to work side by side are suddenly ideologically opposed based entirely on the title they were handed.
And then the final twist, an economic recession hits the factory.
They get demoted.
Both the foremen and the stewards are demoted back to regular workers, and their attitudes reverted right back to the original baseline.
Literally became their roles. Their authentic personality was completely fluid. And there's a historical example of this with Andy Grove, the former CEO of Intel, right? His Wolf School.
Andy Grove is a perfect case study. He understood leadership required pretense. Intel was fighting a brutal war in the microchip market. Grove had a team of brilliant, highly technical, but very shy and introverted managers.
Quiet problem solvers.
But Grove believed Intel needed to project absolute dominance, so he didn't tell his managers to be authentic. He forced them into aggressive training classes known as Wolf School.
He explicitly taught them how to play the role of an aggressive, table-pounding leader. He taught them how to act.
Exactly, because their authentic, shy selves were not useful to the organization's survival strategy.
But let me challenge this. If I'm leading a team and I'm genuinely terrified a project is going to fail, putting on a mask feels like lying.
Yeah.
Doesn't that destroy trust?
This is where we have to separate what people claim they want from what they actually respond to.
Okay.
Employees might claim they want an authentic leader who shares their fears, but what they absolutely do not want is a leader who is visibly panicked. They want stability. They want the projection of confidence, even if it is an illusion.
It's the airline captain analogy. If the engine catches fire, you want the captain to sound completely bored and calm. If they authentically scream, "We're all going to die," that just induces mass panic.
That is a perfect analogy. And in the corporate world, showing your true, vulnerable self is incredibly risky. The organization is a theater of power. If you expose your vulnerabilities, you are very often just handing your political rivals the exact ammunition they need to undermine your authority.
They'll smile to your face and then tell the VP you aren't stable enough for the new account.
Yes. In sociology, this requirement to mask your feelings is known as emotional labor. You are explicitly being paid a premium for the exhausting psychological act of suppressing your real emotions.
Think about that exhaustion you feel when you finally log off Zoom and just deflate. That isn't a bug in the system. It's a core component of your job description. You are fulfilling a psychological contract.
And the higher you go, the heavier that mask becomes.
Okay, so we're playing a role. We're dealing with narcissists. But surely at the foundational level, there have to be honesty. Trust is the ultimate currency of business.
That brings us to myth number 3, the honesty and trust fallacy. We desperately want to believe the economy is built on mutual respect. But the statistical reality is that the modern workplace is an ecosystem absolutely saturated with systemic deception.
Let's look at the numbers. The Edelman Trust Barometer shows that less than 20% of the general public believes business leaders will tell the truth on difficult issues.
Less than 1 in 5.
And internally, a Merit's poll shows that a microscopic 7% of employees believe senior management's actions match their words.
93% of the workforce assumes their leadership is being deceitful.
And this deception is baked in from the start. The background check data in the sources. 44% of applicants actively lie about their work history on their resumes.
41% lie about their education. 23% literally forge credentials.
People are falsifying their identities just to get a foot in the door, because total honesty is an immediate disqualifier. And once you're in, the company starts lying to you.
Specifically, lying about promotion prospects. Why? Because the absolute truth is economically inefficient.
Right. Imagine telling a solid, dependable B-plus worker that they have zero chance of ever moving up.
They would immediately update their LinkedIn and start looking for a new job, or they quiet quit.
So organizations dangle false hope. They use elaborate personal development plans to extract maximum productivity for years.
73% of companies admit to deceiving employees about upward mobility to prevent core talent from leaving.
This is where it gets mind-bending. The applicants are lying, the bosses are lying, the CEOs are lying, and we all implicitly know it. Why doesn't the system just collapse?
Because human beings possess a psychological superpower called moral decoupling. We compartmentalize reality. We mentally separate a leader's professional performance from their personal honesty.
So if a CEO is an absolute liar, but the stock price is up 30%, the board just looks the other way.
They rationalize it as a necessary tactic for market dominance. Truth is just a strategic asset to be deployed or discarded based on survival.
It's like watching a magic show. You know you're being deceived, but you willingly agree to the illusion because you want the entertainment. In business, we want the paycheck or the vested stock options.
Or we desperately want to believe in a grand vision. Which brings us to Steve Jobs.
Oh, his reality distortion field.
Yes. The FBI profiled Jobs and noted his habitual tendency to twist facts and make wildly unrealistic promises about Apple technology. He was essentially lying to the public and investors.
Announcing features they hadn't even built yet. But the crazy part is that lie became a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Exactly. He painted this impossible phantom vision, but because he sold it with absolute certainty, he attracted top engineers and billions in capital.
And with that capital, they actually built the impossible thing he lied about. The market structurally incentivizes the lie.
The market rewards the successful illusionist.
So we accept the lies, we tolerate the toxicity because we buy into myth number 4. The belief that, in a crisis, the company will protect us. Leaders eat last.
The leadership industry thrives on these romanticized stories of shared sacrifice, the noble captain going down with the ship. But organizational reality is a story of extreme contractual self-interest.
Let's look at the Harold case study first, just to show how early this starts.
Yes, Harold. He was a founder who deeply trusted his advisor. He believed in gentlemen's agreements and mentorship.
And what happened?
His trusted advisor turned around, allied with lawyers, and completely forced Harold out of his own company, stripping him of control.
Because the implicit trust meant nothing when the financial incentives shifted. And we see this at the highest levels too. Bill Gates, in the early days of Microsoft.
Microsoft repeatedly broke informal agreements with early software partners when it suited them, which allowed them to gain absolute monopoly power. The market didn't punish the betrayal. It rewarded the scale.
And when a company actually fails, it's even worse. Let's talk about Gannett and their former CEO, Craig Duell. Under his leadership, the stock plummeted from $75 a share to $10.
A monumental destruction of value.
Over 20,000 regular employees lost their jobs. Did the leader eat last?
Not even close. He retired with a $37 million golden parachute, plus his $16 million salary for his final 2 years.
Rewarded with generational wealth for catastrophic failure. And he isn't an anomaly. Robert Nardelli at Home Depot ousted, took a $210 million severance package.
Or Rick Wagoner at GM steered the company toward bankruptcy, still walked away with $23 million.
The structural rules are written so executives get a golden parachute, while frontline workers get a cardboard box for their desk. How does an ecosystem biologically sustain itself when it rewards the people destroying it?
It sustains itself because we misunderstand what an organization is. We project human traits onto it. We call it a family.
It's not a family.
It does not have a soul. It's a tool for economic survival. An inherently selfish, actuarial entity designed to generate capital and manage risk. Leaders ensure their own security first because the power structure allows them to write ironclad contracts before a crisis hits.
Well, the frontline worker just gets implicit, verbal promises, work hard, and we'll take care of you.
And organizational psychology shows over 55% of those implicit employment contracts are broken by the employer within the first 2 years.
55%. So if you're waiting for your company to reward your past loyalty, you're living in a fantasy. They are pricing you purely on future utility.
Which brings us to the most critical, actionable part of this deep dive. Because if we stop here, it is profoundly depressing.
Seriously, if the workplace optimizes for narcissism, punishes authenticity, and protects the elite while abandoning the worker, how do we survive Monday morning?
First, we have to completely stop relying on individual morality to save us. Stop waiting for a savior CEO. Pfeffer points to the quality movement led by W. Edwards Deming.
How does manufacturing theory apply here?
Deming taught that if a factory produces defective cars, you don't pray for a charismatic manager to inspire the workers. You fix the underlying mechanical system. Relying on heroes is mathematically flawed.
You cannot outmotivate a structurally broken system.
Exactly. You look for companies that use hard, unbreakable metrics to enforce good behavior, like DaVita, the kidney dialysis company.
Right. They tie the manager's financial compensation to the retention metrics of their frontline staff.
If a manager is a screaming narcissist, but their bonus is slashed if nurses quit, the system forces them to act respectfully.
Or Zappos, where every C-suite executive has to do mandatory frontline customer service. The system structurally prevents them from losing touch.
But those companies are rare exceptions. Most people are operating in the standard algorithm. So you must learn to navigate reality by making a cognitive shift. Differentiate between the normative and the descriptive.
Break that down.
The normative is how the world should be, the fairy tale. Leaders should be honest, modesty should win. The descriptive is how the world actually is, the cold data. Narcissists get promoted, authenticity is weaponized.
So what does a listener actually do with this tomorrow?
You become fiercely, unapologetically objective about your environment. Actively protect your own interests because the company is only protecting theirs.
Stop waiting to be noticed and start strategically self-promoting.
Recognize that putting on the mask of confidence isn't selling out. It's a professional skill necessary for survival. Demand hard metrics and written contracts over empty inspiration. When you accept the descriptive reality, you immune yourself to the toxic shock of corporate betrayal.
That is such a profound shift in perspective. You stop being a passive victim of a system you don't understand.
Exactly.
To wrap this all up, let's just zoom out. We spend $20 billion a year on an industry that sells us comfortable lies. We buy millions of books telling us to be humble, while the objective data screams that theatrical pretense and ruthless self-interest run the board.
The noble rules we are explicitly taught are actively weaponized against us by those who know how the game is truly played.
Which leaves me with a final, chilling question for everyone listening. Why do we keep buying these leadership books? Why do we keep filling out the happy sheets? Is it possible that we, the employees, are actually deeply complicit in maintaining this cycle?
It's a loop.
The objective truth is terrifying. It's chaotic and unfair. So maybe, on a deep level, we actively demand these perfect fairy tales just to feel safe in a cutthroat world. Maybe we want the illusion because the reality is too cold to face. The ultimate question isn't whether the corporate world will ever stop lying to you. It's whether you will finally stop lying to yourself.